Hi guys, it's Irish Rob from The Exploited. This is Sea of Blood, especially for Matt Justice.
So, Rob, architect in a punk band. Never heard of that before.
You'd be surprised there's a few of us around. Yeah, yeah.
But tell us this. Tell us the story of how a lad from Listowel ends up the bassist in the Exploited.
Yeah, I suppose I moved to Edinburgh in '99 to study architecture, and within months of moving there, I fell in with a load of lads. Like I moved with one, I suppose, a couple of spare pairs of underwear, and a few pairs of socks, two electric guitars, a bass, and an acoustic guitar. So my priorities were there. I fell in with a lot of lads playing in a hardcore band from Kirkcaldy called Certain Death, and I joined that band, and that's the same. That was the guitarist Robbie Davidson, Steed from The Exploited. So I started just roadieing and doing sound. I'd already worked as a sound engineer, so I started touring a bit with The Exploited. And I suppose a couple of years later, the bassist quit. Actually, the guitarist and bassist both quit at the same time. And originally, I auditioned because I played guitar. Really, I played guitar in Certain Death. I wasn't much of a bassist, and I auditioned on guitar, and my pal Ginger Matty auditioned on bass. But I couldn't play any of the solos, like which is a bit of a problem. Uh, the rhythm part's mostly all right, but I wasn't that kind of guitarist. I was never that good because I know it's punk and everyone thinks it's pretty straightforward, but some of the exploited guitar stuff is pretty tight, pretty
Christ,
fast, and
yeah,
pretty.
it's blistering. Some of the leads. Like, fair play to Stevie.
Exactly that. I mean, like not so much the older stuff, but definitely from Beat the Bastards on. I actually maybe even from the Massacre on there's a kind
Massacre.
of a step up there musically, I think. So eventually, because I got on quite well with the rest of the lads, and I think Wattie just sort of said, well, actually, Robbie didn't quit. He came back into the band, which was great for me. And then I joined as a bass player. So the way I'd put it is I stopped working and started playing. It was great for
Yeah,
me.
brilliant, brilliant. But yeah, so you had been obviously interested in music and all that kind of stuff. You were bringing over all guitars.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, growing up in County Kerry, here in Listowel, I mean, in and around North Kerry, music. I started playing fiddle when I was 5 or maybe 6, and I played a bit of classical music when I was a bit older and that. But music definitely, and traditional music especially, is it's just really important to the identity of this part of the world, the west of Ireland in general.
Yeah,
Everybody, I mean, you know yourself, you walk into a pub, and we're fairly I suppose blasé about it. You might speak to someone and say, here I play a bit of banjo or I know a bit of mandolin, and it turns out that they're actually some super
virtuosos. I know.
exactly, yeah,
Pals
I
like
think
that, all right, who do that, and they're just playing like whatever gigs is thrown at them, sit into the pub and get a few pints,
that's it.
and actually you'll watch them and you're like, Jesus Christ, if I could ever do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really true, and I find it's inspirational. It genuinely is when you sit, just have a few pints, and watch some people landing in, and there might be 8 or 10 people in a session, but it might not be the same 8 or 10 people all the time. You might start with 3 or 4, and then at one point you might have 4 borons and accordion and no
Yeah,
fiddle or whatever, and then it transforms, and it's a very kind of organic and fluid way that traditional Irish music works, I think, and I think for me
yeah, you're
anyway,
right. We take it for granted. We do take it for granted. I was down in this town there the other day playing in Mike the Plays, like, and it's a beautiful place, like, but you can see the culture. It's the same. Reminded me the exact same as this part up
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Same exact
The
way.
west of Ireland, I think there's a shared identity amongst people from the west of Ireland, and I think it's not just the rural mindset, but it's a sort of we're quite proud of where we're from, but we're also a little bit we don't want to be overly go on and on about how great it is and all the rest of it because we've seen how that doesn't work. You get stuck in a conversation with someone from Texas or some Londoner and they go on and on about it. You just yeah, right. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
But
we
to
can
be honest,
still export it to
punk
their
music
children, look. But
there's a little bit of that, but like local punk bands, when I we've got friends and we all know, you go and jam and you maybe fill in for a few gigs with this lad or and all the rest of it. And it's a similar. The networks are out there as well. There's people all over the world that help each other out and they'll put each other up and they'll help. Even if it's one guy might be able to record a bit of music and the other guy might be able to put on a few gigs. They generally tend to work together as well.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to do down here as well. And that is happening. Like you've Eddie Neal up there in Dublin, and Peter Jones, and Niall McGurk was doing it for years and years. And sure, could list the names forever, but yeah, there is a lot
Yeah,
of
I
people
mean,
who do that.
I don't
People swap and help each other out and advise you. And sure, like I mean, as a songwriter, I do send songs up to Bitsy and another lad out in Chicago, Fonzie and all that, and they'll come back with advice, and then they were sending me their stuff, and yeah, it's really
Yeah,
cool how that community, what happens that people never see, or never think about. I think it's
yeah, it's supportive as well. It tends not to be kind of like a backstabbing that people are just out for themselves. There's a genuine, I think, I don't know, is it because I suppose it maybe this kind of subculture thing, but I don't see it as much in sort of dance music, and I would work a little bit with that, and even metal, all right, is a bit better, but there's an element I find now with a lot of the new hardcore bands as well that they're out for themselves. They pretend it's all about like the
yeah,
scene and all this. But I'd see gigs. There'd be 5 or 6 bands. None of the bands watch each other's band. They'll sit out in their own van and like stay in their own little clique. They're
yeah.
not. They're totally. They're the opposite of what they're preaching. A lot of them, if you ask me, anyway. They're full of shit. They're like,
But maybe they don't get it. Maybe they haven't seen it. Like, I mean, there is that. I've spoken about it in previous interviews. There is that kind of, it's embedded in the culture. It's from top down. This idea, like, in our economics, that there's a finite cake and you have to cut yourself the largest slice out of that as you possibly can. Whereas in true economics, you realize the more people are involved, the bigger the cake is, and the bigger there is, the more
that's it.
for everyone. And
Yeah,
I think, yeah, grassroots punk rock kind of gets that, and
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
the
I
meaning.
mean, now I don't know if you've been to Edinburgh ever, but I work. I'm a sound engineer in Bannerman's, which is just a small, we'll say sort of 180 capacity, something similar. But we'd have live music maybe on average 5 or 6 nights a week.
Class.
And the ethos when I started there was a good friend of mine took over the place and asked me if I was interested in doing the sound, but it was at the time it was sort of a dive bar, and it was, don't get me wrong, it was great and all the rest of it, but I thought that there was a lot of potential, and I kind of made this point that our competition is not the pub across the road or the nightclub up the street. I saw it as like, no, what our competition, if you want to use that term, it's like SO36 in Kreuzberg in Berlin.
Yeah.
It's Secret Race in Montpellier in France, and like it's these small little places that like the Baruch in Rotterdam. These sort of like these are venues. When you see bands touring and you see their merch, these are the names that keep popping up on the back of the T-shirt. These are the venues that these bands are all playing in, and I really wanted to push us to be on that kind of circuit. And
Yeah.
in order to get there, I mean, I'm only one cog in this big system, but it was important to try and get this ethos across that we're not just in competition with our neighbors. Actually, what we should be doing is we should be feeding into our neighbors, and we should be helping them out and supporting them, and quite literally, just even day to day, if they come in and or we hear that they're all their mics have got nicked, we go and we give them a loan, and like that happened recently, or they need some mic stands or some cables, or they're short a monitor, and we've got some spare, just to actually help out and make it really evident that we don't see them as like our competition. We see it like we should be together, and our competition should be much, much bigger. And like that idea when you're talking about, the pod.
Happening here. It's happening here. Like in the last, we're not like he playing as many gigs. But for us, like we had about 6 gigs in 5 weeks, and the radio station here, CFM, put on one with 4 local acts. The week after, Wisteria, just like our drummer's promotion, they brought over the Smelters from Canada and No Matter from Northern
Oh yeah,
Ireland. And the week before, I think that I had with the Curse Lamb promotions in Claremorris, I put on the Lee Harveys and all that kind of stuff.
that's
And
what I saw the
think
pictures
some
of
people
that.
would argue, well, that's very intense. Nobody's going. How can you ask people to come out all the time? But there's different people all the time, and it
There we
works.
go.
And the
Yeah,
whole thing is like it creates something of interest, and everybody can see it. Like I'm getting people stopped in car parks. Hey, Niall, when's the next gig? By people you wouldn't.
yeah.
And because there's something happening, so everything does support itself. I think people just need to have that vision rather than succumb to the rhetoric of the small cake kind of thing. But yeah,
I totally.
there. It's happening there too as well.
I know. Yeah, you were in Mike the Pies in the stall there not long ago, and like so, Aidan O'Connor there, Conquer. There was no, I mean, there was no music in that pub. He's, I think, fourth generation. It just wasn't a music pub. But he lived in Manchester for years, and he's a big music fan. And
Now they're
he, I,
Heineken's venue of the year for 2 or 3 years running.
that's it. And the IMRO, they've, I mean, huge bands like the Fontaines DC. Like I see them at any opportunity they get to internationally, and whenever they're being
Aidan was
introduced.
saying that to me that Fontaine's DC will play down there, and after they became huge, like they would still go down there. He was like, Jesus, I was on the internet. telling people that
And but
get them in.
when Aidan started doing that, in fairness to him, there was like when I was a teenager, there was a few different places in town we could play in. You know, Quilters was a great kind of hard rock and metal bar. There was St. John's, the Arts and Heritage Centre. Like I put on a few gigs there, but we sort of when I was about 14 or 15, we put on a gig, and I think I sold about 350 tickets for a 150 capacity venue. Like, it was, and then a local solicitor, we're all friends, his daughter stage dived and broke her arm, which was of course not great. Like, yeah, but what I mean is that there was a few things when I was younger that were going on, and people were, young lads were in bands and we jam and we'd put on a gig every now and then. But when Aidan started doing these gigs in Mike the Pies, that had died a death. There was almost nowhere left in Listowel. And this is a town with a population of 5,000 people or something, that there's just nowhere for young people to go and play, like even listen to the live music. But I think it's important to perform it as well, to get in about it. Like there's no replacing it. And I think it helps out with a lot of, there's good evidence to suggest that a lot of kids, they just find trouble if they don't have things like music to go and do.
Absolutely, for sure. But on the other hand of the scale, getting back to the fans here, the exploited. Now, I was reading one of your interviews. I think it was you were playing Armenia or something like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you'd had 40 gigs so far. That's about a month ago. This is 2023. Like,
Yeah.
I have to respect, like in the Commitments years ago, like the hardest working band in Dublin or whatever, that was the kind of thing. Christ, exploited. Hardest working band in punk rock, man. You're serious. Like, you.
Well, do you know what's funny? This year, you might say that, but to me, we've not actually been gigging as much. The previous years, like if you go back 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, we would do 45-day tours in 47 days. I remember the like really long, big European tour and then straight off to America, where you'd basically be away from home for 4 months and have maybe a handful of days off where you weren't gigging.
Yeah, he said that. Was that Wattie on the poster? Because it just reminded me of his personality. You'd have the posters, I talked about this with people before. You'd have, like, let's say, Paris, such a day. The next day is Lyon. The next day is Barcelona. The next day, Madrid. And then you'd have day off written on the poster. As if he's kind of telling you. And what you call it, Steve, like, I remember there, Stevie in the bands, he sent me, or he posted up on his, he has a page there where he has a few friends on it. But he posted up a thing about the exploited gigs for this year, for 2023, and I was like, Jesus Christ, there's over 100 gigs, like. I was like, someone sending it out to you guys. Here, just make yourselves available.
The thing is, though, we've had to be a lot more careful with Wattie's health. He's had a load of heart attacks and stuff. And so I've kind of, it was a few years ago, I'd said there's a guy called Mitch, who's the main booker for the Exploited in Europe, and he's sort of a de facto band manager, really. If it wasn't Wattie that was the manager, it's this guy. And I kind of said to him, like, we should be doing no more than 4 gigs a week and no more than 3 in a row, if you get me. So that, like, that Wattie has time to relax. And the other thing is that maybe that we can start traveling so if there's a case that we have to take the equipment and all the rest of it in a bus and it's going to be a 12-hour drive, maybe Wattie can fly or get a train or something instead, because he can't keep that kind of pace up. Like you say, you can't do that forever. Yeah.
Well, you look pretty shocked. There was footage of, where was it, in Bogota, was it, the last time?
Oh, yeah. Not
you were telling me it was altitude. Was it Stevie who was telling me it was altitude sickness?
Yeah, I think that was the main cause. I went over to the hospital because, funnily enough, they wouldn't take a credit card or something like that. And like the man, actually, that's another tour manager, a guy called Matthias Prill, who looks after us in South America. And he and Wattie, he went with Wattie in the ambulance to the hospital, and was trying to pay. And I know it was, fairness to Colombian public healthcare, what an amazing system and all the rest. But for some reason, they couldn't process his whatever credit card. So I got a call to be like, oh, can you bring cash? So I went over with some cash. Between the jigs and the reels, they didn't even take the money anyway. They wouldn't. Yeah. But one of the doctors who was on call came and spoke to me and said, yeah, we don't think it's cardiac related. It might well be, but it's definitely his blood oxygen is way down. So his best guess was that it was altitude sickness that manifested on, and what he's a funny lad. He'll never be 50%. Like it's not at all or 100%. He doesn't understand, and that's it. That's the way he is. Like that's the way he'll go.
Yeah, but like I
He'll
mean, you can see the intensity he puts into the show.
yeah.
Jesus,
What is
I was
like
watching the video. You know, people posted that video of Loggins or whatever they posted online. I was watching your face, man. You were looking shocked, like you dropped your bass there and fucking ran over your.
I've seen it before. He had a heart attack on stage in Portugal, and it was a miracle that he survived it. You know, it really was. And he hadn't been feeling right a few days before it, so it wasn't that I expected it, but it was something that was probably it was in the back of my mind that this was a potential outcome. Like,
Yeah.
he's yeah, and like if it's a funny
Curious.
one. Like, he's
Curious
he's a
stuff.
gas. Yeah, like if he doesn't, right, it's not like he won't be nice to you. There's one thing, but and then on the flip side of that, if you're his friend, there's nothing he won't do for you. He's a very, very genuine and behind. I know it's awkward for him because he's a famous guy, and walking down the street, people are pestering him and all the rest of it. But he's got infinite patience especially for exploited fans. He's really good, and like with kids and all the rest of it. He's just a really nice. You see it.
Yeah, sure. When we were playing with you up in the Grand Social there, and thanks for that gig, by the way, because it was you.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember what happened was when I bring the lads up in the school runs, because I shoot over to the office was in the morning, so I dropped them off. So in the car, there'd be always some punk rock playing and all that, and Exploited would feature. And of course, cop cars, and they fucking.
Yeah.
I walked in one night and says, "Oh yeah, we're playing with Exploited, blah blah," and Sigurd, one of the young lads, goes, "Oh hey, you're playing with Exploited?" I says, "No, we're playing on the stage. We're playing support." That's a disappointment. But next
we'll figure that out next time for Sex and Violence on guitar, maybe, or something. Yeah.
Well, a couple of days later, this letter you'd written it out for me. I didn't fucking say anything about it. He was like, "Dear Wattie, have a great gig. My favourite songs are Cop Car." I forget the other one he said, and signed to Sigurd, and his younger brother is 2 years younger than him, but wouldn't be able to write letters yet now, but he was pissed off about it, so he had to sign his name Hector down the end of it, and I was warned to fucking deliver it, so I left it in the guitar case, and arrive up, you saw, like, we're down the green room or whatever, the backstage on the Grand Social, I handed it over to Wattie, he says, "Here, it's from one of your youngest fans," and he read it there first. I was, what the fuck do? You say the guy who's, track of your youth, like. But yeah, so I gave it to him, and I remember he turned around. He says, "Here, have you got a video?" And he says, "How do you pronounce? I want to get this right." He says, "Sigurd," and he says, "Yeah, that's what it is." He says, "Here, have you got your phone on you? Take a video." And he goes, holds up the letter, and he goes, "Hiya, Sigurd and Hector. Thanks very much for your letter. Punk's not dead." And I sent it back to the boys, and they were fucking made their fucking universe.
Yeah. But see, he'd be genuinely enthused by that.
He says to me, "I'm taking this home to the wife now. It means a lot to me. That's why I have people up on the stage to give them a night to remember that that's the whole point of it." And very genuine. I think a lot of respect.
Totally, it's that thing, and he's got a proper heart. Now the other thing is when he's performing, he might not. he's a different person, or he can be. He gets into a certain psyche, and then
you have to believe what you're saying.
Yeah, like he's got this intensity on stage that he just doesn't have off stage, but that's part of his professional persona, if you want. Like that's the way he is on stage. But the other thing I think as well with Wattie, and I like this idea because getting people up on stage to have a great time and all, but there's this other element of like punk rock, this idea of like, well, if we can do it, anyone can do it. You know what I mean? So Violence, 3 words. There's 3, there's 3 chords in the whole song. It's as meat and veg basic as you can get, but the idea of bringing people from the audience, it to me anyway, it's a nice way of merging this idea that like I've never enjoyed a gig where you just stand there and you might as well be in a zoo watching them perform. I love the idea of
performer in the exploited gigs, and like where that came from, Rob. The whole Joe Strummer says get 3 chords and do it. What happened was they were in Portsmouth. I looked into this. They were in Portsmouth and they were getting booed off the stage because punk was something new. And Strummer turns around and says, "If you think you can do better, fucking do it," So he wasn't like saying to people, and then the enemy or whatever it was started writing saying, "Oh, your punks are encouraging you. Anybody can do it. Just grab a fucking guitar." And we took it. So it's funny how something that didn't happen as a genuine kind of remark became the ethos of punk, and then we all felt it. And when you have Wattie doing that, he's actually fucking doing.
Brilliant. That's great to know. Joe Strummer, absolutely brilliant. Mescaleros especially. Well, I suppose obviously the Clash, but yeah.
Class, class. But what else was I going to say to you? You've the sound engineering you're doing a fair bit of that. Like you're doing some serious gigs, like.
But sure, that was my staple for. I started at Radio Kerry. Well, like I suppose I was. In fact, when I was about 14, I started putting on gigs around the place, and would rent a PA from actually a very good friend of mine. It was his father. He was man of 90, still around, and all the rest of it. And we'd just rent what we'd call now vocal PAs. They would have been things for public addresses, for the community games and all that. And but I'd been 14, he wasn't very happy to be renting it to me, so I'd have to get my pals' older brothers to go and pretend it was them. But I'd just figure out, as DIY and just figuring out how to operate them, wire it up, pack it down. You start learning pretty quickly, and if you're interested in that kind of thing, even back then there was a lot of people around that would be more than happy to talk. Just a young teenager, and I find the same thing now that I'm 42, and I very often we've even small places. If there's people who come in, their level of knowledge doesn't really interest me. It's their enthusiasm. If they want, like I'd much sooner have a kid straight out of school with no sound qualifications whatsoever come in and start shadowing than someone who's been through 3 years of SAE and has all the technical knowledge and all the rest of it, because very often they think they know it all and they just stop learning. Whereas with a job like sound, you should just constantly, every day should be a bit different. You should be learning something every day. You should be, you should be challenging yourself and trying to kind of, I don't know, progress music in general, but also the people that you're working with and working for should have a good understanding of what it is you do. And like, if you can't say that, well, I do this and I'm learning while I'm doing this job, you shouldn't really be in it. I that's the way I think about it. And I've worked.
It's sort of fair. You see that you're doing the architecture so much. Like you see so many people who fear not having an answer rather than being able to say, listen, I don't know right now, but I know how to find out and I'll come back to you tomorrow with the answer. They don't have the confidence to kind of, be human, they adopt the persona of the expert, which, and that can read whatever you're doing, you know what I mean? Because that's when bad decisions are made.
That's it. I think it's good to have a bit of this imposter syndrome. I think that's a bit of to be honest anyway. If you do something wrong with you must be some sort of clinical psychopath, because you if you convince yourself that you know everything, you're pretty far gone. Like,
must have had a pretty sheltered life where you haven't been around the world much. You know what I mean?
And I mean, you get a fairly sharp shock. If you think you know it all, and then you leave that small pond and you go into the big pond and you realize that you're no longer the big fish and that there's some sort of whales out there to get you.
Yeah, and you should, like, everybody should be driven to kind of, you got one life to try and, push it as far as it can go and learn as much as, like, I don't know how people get bored. Like, I mean, I kind of look around and kind of go, Jesus Christ, there's so much you could be doing. That's
like the lockdowns during like COVID. I think that was, you could really see, for me anyway, I kind of started getting very antsy, and I bought tools. I was in Ireland, and I've been working on this small project of my own, a little coach house.
Yeah.
But then in the evening, I just started making picture frames for cartoons out of, Private Eye, the sort of political, it's a fortnightly, it's a UK thing. And the same like the Phoenix here, or, the little caricature drawings and little cartoon drawings you get, mostly political stuff in newspapers. Yeah. And I just make, bespoke frames for each, these, because I think they're fucking hilarious, these jokes, and especially politicians. The longer it goes on, or the older I get, the more ridiculous they seem to become. But I don't know if that's just because I'm realizing just how away with it they are, like, And
you come from Ireland, so, like, I mean, we set the best when it comes to politicians.
I don't know about that now. I mean, like the last 18 months in the UK has been fucking horrendous. Like, I mean, Boris Johnson, you thought you couldn't get worse than that, and then you've got Liz Truss coming in.
It's a bit of a pantomime, all right, over there, and sure, like, that's the thing. We copy and paste your legislation.
Unfortunately,
what they do is, yourself, because the architectural game, you see developers, whatever's working somewhere, and they're gentrifying something, or they're messing around, they got a tax break or whatever. And then it's, copy and paste. Oh, that looks good, the neoliberal thing, Jesus, working for them, let's do that here. The people are not being considered, and the long term is certainly not being considered, which is,
well, and they're greedy, rotten bastards. Like,
Well, you see it. Like I suppose we come from a culture of the west of Ireland where, as I've said, your greatest export is your children. So you see, like when I grew up, there's about 98% immigration in this town, and
Yeah.
like there's people telling me, "Oh, the recession is over in Dublin," and I'm like, "Sure, it fucking never ends down here." But
Oh, sure.
yeah, yeah. But we
Exactly.
won't go down. We won't get too sullen. I wanted to talk to you before we go because I can see the time is coming up there.
Uh-huh.
Crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Like the other thing I do, I suppose creative people, we're always fucking doing something like you were saying about the cartoons. The other thing I did in life was martial arts and all that. And it was a Wudan martial art. And of course, you have the famous film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they're all flying over the trees. So my question, Rob, is the acrobatics on stage, man. Jesus, you know ropes at all. I was looking at the last picture. Both your feet are about 8 foot in the air and about 2 foot higher than Wattie's face. Like this guy's in some,
Funny
must
picture.
be doing some training for this because
To be honest, I think what happens is because like I'll jump off the drum riser a lot.
I
Like there's
know.
certain parts, certain songs where I've kind of hardwired my brain, and now we've got this fill-in drummer, Joe. He's a really good guy. Willie used to hate me doing it, you see, because it would the whole drum kit moves basically, whereas Joe finds it a bit of a laugh. So I think I tend to do it a bit more now than I used to. But like that, sure, when you're in the zone having the crack on stage,
Yeah.
you feel 10 feet tall. So I think
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Like it's really like communicates over to the audience as well. Like this band are fucking loving it.
Well, I must say, some of the photographers that like I've now gotten to know as friends. There's a few of them. Like there's a guy called Roberto Pavic, who just, I mean, he's just at his next level. He takes a lot of sort of he works at Hellfest as well each year, but he does a lot of natural, taking photographs like sort of like National Geographic style stuff, and then he'll come along to a punk gig and slum it along with us. But I mean, like, and there's quite a few others that have, you get to know when they might send me a big folder of, they might have taken like 500 photos that night, and it's not, I don't think, well, I hope it's not that I'm some sort of narcissist, but it's great to see some nice pictures of like not just me of the band and people, sex and violence, and just like, and know that, all right, I'll keep that one. That's a photograph in 10 years time, hopefully
Yeah.
I'm still around. Like I'll be able to show that now, look at it again and remember and have the crack. And that's, that's kind of, it's a way of remembering. I'm the same sort of like certain mementos. Like I always keep my old laminates, the passes for tours
Yeah.
and t-shirts. If a band ever gives me a t-shirt, even if it doesn't fit me, I have them. I have them all, and festivals. It's lovely, lovely kind of.
Well, it's a journey, like, it's a journey, and it's quite a journey if you're in the exploited, I'd say.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Actually, we're looking forward to the next few months now. We've just got a few, mostly weekend gigs, but then we're off to Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah.
November, which was brilliant to get back because we were in New Zealand when COVID struck, and we had to cancel that Australian tour.
Right.
And it would have been a sort of 2.5 week tour there. And so to be able to go back and do it now, because in the back of my mind, I was sort of thinking like, shit, that might be that, we might exploit it, might not, like really. I personally, I don't know how long left there is in the band. Who God only knows what will happen. There's a load of songs written. And
Is there an album coming out? There's always rumors. Like, I mean, I know, but how do you get time to do it?
There generally should have been 3 or 4 albums. There was so much material in the last 20 years. I mean, I'm in the band 20 years and I'm not on any album.
I know, it's shocking.
So a lot of people blame me. They think I just sort of cursed, but like we used to demo like even sometimes we really hit it hard. We'd be down there 2 or 3 times a week just demoing. Willie's he's a really, really clever sound engineer himself. Like we could produce stuff on his computer and mix and master and all the rest of it. And it was a lot of it was thereabouts. Now Wattie didn't have very many lyrics, or there was that was the last, we'll say, piece of the jigsaw a lot of the time. But certainly, I mean,
are you performing any new songs? Like, do you play any of them at the gigs?
No, we haven't. Well, like at Soundcheck, all right, we'll play them a few, and we'll very often go over stuff. I think that there might be a bit of there would be a bit of an issue. I think record labels, like I think Nuclear Blast wouldn't be that happy if we were to be playing unreleased material before they get to release it, just in case everyone says it's shit, and then they you know what I mean? They don't sell any albums.
Yeah, like, I'm thinking that, like, we're free Deadbeats MO, like, we don't have any of those constraints at the moment, but yeah, I know, I've heard. Yeah.
I'm surmising. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but there's a fairly. I can imagine if I owned a record label, I'd want to release the stuff before people start going.
Well, there's probably people who are paid to promote it, and you know, you're annoying them if you're doing it yourself and all that kind of crack. But yeah, sure.
I think the other thing though as well, there's, I mean, is it 5 or 6? So Robbie, I'm talking about guitarists now. There was Robbie, Gav, Tommy Concrete, Matt Justice. Now there's Stevie.
Yeah.
And between Robbie and Matt Justice, they were kind of a revolving door for about 6 or 7 years. They kind of one could join for a couple of years and then leave, and then, you know, but they've both individually got a lot on, you know, they're really busy guys themselves, so I think it would kind of they couldn't really fulfill the obligations.
Each
of those guitarists has recorded almost an album's worth, I would say, you know, each of them. So I don't know.
A whole lot of exploited stuff in the closet somewhere, really.
There is somewhere, yeah. I'm not even going to get into where that is or anything, because that's a story for a different day. Like.
Yeah. Well, listen, Rob, I see the time is against us. I could talk to you all day, man. Listen, thanks a million. Thanks a million.
An absolute pleasure. I'm kind of relieved that I was able to do that. I don't know why, but from home here in Kerry, it just seems more connected to what we're talking about than doing it from Edinburgh, where I spend most of my time.
Yeah.
But Kerry's more in my heart than Scotland for sure.
It still is, yeah. And you'll still take the Sam office, which your mail are out now at this stage. But it's Dublin Monaghan, isn't it? Saturday, and Kerry Derry on Sunday. Yeah. We'll sink a few pints anyway. Hold on.
Sounds well. Take it easy, man.
All right, thanks a million, Rob.
And Kaos. Deadbeat's journey through the underground. Interviews, music, punk, community. Attitude. Support your scene, like, follow, and share. And say hello in the comments below.